Welcome. If you're a startup e-commerce seller, you already know your supply chain is literally the lifeblood of your business. But today's explainer isn't just going to be your standard run-of-the-mill overview. Instead, I want you to treat this as your essential survival guide for navigating the professional manufacturing landscape in China as we look toward 2026. We are focusing laser sharp today on exactly how to identify truly high-quality source factories, and more importantly, how to sidestep those hidden pitfalls that routinely crush new sellers. Okay, let's dive right into this. Is finding the lowest price actually destroying your e-commerce startup? You see, the amateur strategy in sourcing is what we call the race to the bottom. You jump on a platform, filter by the lowest price, and just assume that a plastic widget is the exact same plastic widget no matter who makes it, right? Well, wrong. That strategy today is a massive, incredibly expensive trap. Let me show you why.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the new sourcing reality in 2026, then move into identifying true source factories, avoiding quality and IP traps, securing your payments and logistics, and finally, building a resilient, compliant supply chain.
Now let's jump straight into Section 1, the 2026 sourcing reality.
What you absolutely need to understand right out of the gate is this. A price 20% below the market average often results in a 50% higher defect rate. I mean, that completely shatters the whole illusion of bottom barrel pricing, doesn't it? Raw material costs and labor standards in China have stabilized. The era of magical, hidden cheap labor is essentially over. Because of that, outlier low prices basically guarantee one thing: corner cutting. Prioritizing the absolute lowest price doesn't actually save you money, it actively destroys your profitability through skyrocketing return rates, terrible customer reviews, and just boxes of unsellable inventory.
So how do we fix this? Well, the pro move is right here. You need to request a cost breakdown. Don't just accept a flat single unit price. Ask the supplier to separate their raw material costs from their labor costs. By asking for this breakdown, you create vital transparency. It exposes exactly where a supplier might be sacrificing quality. If their material cost is mysteriously half of the market average, you know exactly what game they're playing.
Moving along to Section 2, identifying true source factories. There is a stark contrast here between how an amateur operates and how a pro does. Amateurs often think they're talking to a factory when they are actually talking to a trading middleman. Real factories, OEM or ODM, are best for high volume and custom designs. They have deep technical expertise and direct pricing, though their minimum order quantities, or MOQs, are usually higher, often around 500 units or more. Trading companies, on the other hand, are great for small batches and mixed categories, with lower, more flexible MOQs. But their product knowledge is shallow, and they slap a 10 to 30% markup on the price. Knowing when to use a trader versus going direct is absolutely key to your margin strategy.
But how do you know for sure who is who? The easiest professional trick is verifying their true identity via their business license. Ask for it and look at the scope of business. You want to see words like production or manufacturing. If the license only says wholesale or consulting, guess what? You're dealing with a trading company. This simple check ensures you aren't accidentally paying a 30% middleman premium when you fully intended to go direct to the source.
Let's transition over to Section 3, avoiding quality and IP traps.
Now, what's really interesting here is understanding this concept, quality fade. It's a phenomenon where your initial golden sample is absolutely perfect, but the mass production quality slowly degrades over your second, third, and fourth orders. Why does this happen? Well, factories sometimes secretly swap in cheaper sub-suppliers for components to widen their own margins over time. To stop this dead in its tracks, you must implement a product spec sheet, or PSS. Don't ever rely on standard quality. Document every single detail, from screw torque to exact Pantone colors, and lock your standards straight into the purchase contract.
And speaking of maintaining standards, avoid vague communication. Utilize visual standard operating procedures, visual SOPs, with annotated photos instead of sending long text-heavy emails. Assuming a factory just naturally understands Western expectations is a massive rookie mistake. If your packaging needs to survive the postal system, and we all know exactly how packages are treated in transit, you need to provide mandatory visual instructions showing exactly how a 1-meter drop test is performed. Show them, don't just tell them.
Then there's the whole intellectual property side of things. Entering the market without an IP strategy is, well, actually scratch that, it's incredibly dangerous. A standard Western non-disclosure agreement is often totally useless in China. Instead, you need an NNN agreement. Non-disclosure, non-use, non-circumvention.
This contract is actually enforceable in Chinese courts. Combine this with a registered Chinese trademark, and you protect your startup from IP squatters legally seizing your own goods right at the border.
Okay, moving on to Section 4, Secure Payments and Stress-Free Logistics.
Let's look at a classic Incoterms trap, EXW versus FOB. EXW, or Ex-Works, is the amateur choice. It looks super cheap up front on the quote, but it completely hides all the export customs costs and pushes the massive logistical burden of getting goods from the factory gate to the shipping port entirely onto you. FOB, or Free on Board, is the pro choice. The supplier handles the domestic transit and export clearance. It is the resilient, professional standard for sea freight.
30/70. I want you to memorize those numbers. This is the golden payment rule. Never, ever pay 100% upfront for a production run. By paying a 30% deposit to start, you initiate the work, but you hold that 70% balance as leverage, and you only release that final 70% after a successful third-party inspection. If you pay it all up front, you lose literally all your leverage if the quality turns out poor or if your lead time suddenly doubles.
Which brings us directly to this absolutely crucial step. Book a pre-shipment inspection, or PSI, through an independent firm when 80% of your order is packed. Trying to save $300 by skipping a PSI is exactly how small buyers end up losing $30,000 in unsellable, defective inventory. Do not rely on the factory's own quality control report. That is a massive conflict of interest. Hire your own eyes on the ground.
Finally, let's guide you to the ultimate mastery level. Section 5, Building a Resilient and Compliant Supply Chain.
Listen, in 2026, compliance is no longer optional. You must verify ESG and compliance. Request BSCI or SEDEX audit reports, strictly avoid sourcing from dark factories, and look for ISO 14001 certification. Global shifts mean buyers are increasingly held legally responsible for their suppliers' labor and environmental practices. Sourcing from a dark factory with zero social compliance risks brand destruction and severe customs seizures. It's just not worth it.
And this brilliantly illustrates your master workflow for sourcing platforms moving forward. Step 1, filter by verified status. Look for suppliers with at least 3 years of history. Step 2, request an RFQ with highly specific target prices, material specs, and certifications. Step 3, audit the facility using a video audit service or a local agent. This is the professional workflow that guarantees success.
I want to leave you with this provocative question to chew on as we wrap up. If your primary factory goes offline tomorrow, does your business survive? This right here is the fatal Plan B mistake. Relying on a single factory for 100% of your revenue is a strategic failure. If they face a fire or insolvency, your business just stops. So establish a secondary supplier immediately. Even if you only give them 10 to 20% of your volume, keep that relationship active so they can scale up in an emergency. Protect your e-commerce empire, use these structured strategies we talked about today, and go out there and source like a pro.